conversation I really want to have. Almost forgot my intro. Hey guys, it's Chi, and today I would like to talk to us about something that I think is very important, very serious. I'm not so sure how to start this, but I had a friend, a male friend, reach out to me today and express his concern with everything that has been going on with all the things that are coming out about R. Kelly allegations, as well as frat culture. And I'm just gonna say white frat culture, and that's definitely different from black frat cultures or historically black frat culture. And I definitely feel like this is, especially as a university student, this is a big issue on just about every campus. And I do believe the school I attend, Wake Forest University, is doing a lot of things to try to help this. I even reached out to someone I consider to be a friend of mine, the president, Danny Reeves, to talk about this. And it's something we in student government, since I am a senator, we sat and we discussed this. We sat and we talked about this, and I think we need to take more time to talk about it, and we need to, I think a lot of issues are issues because we've taken so long to talk about them and we refuse to talk about them. And I do want to say that I am a survivor of sexual assault. So I don't know why I felt the need to say that, but I feel like me too. I don't know. And I also want to say that it's not just females. Just last week, I asked one of my good friends, Daquan, I said, how old were you when you lost your virginity? And he said to me, oh, it was taken from me by this girl. And I think I see whenever this kind of conversation comes up, too many people are saying, yeah, it's me too, it's way too common, and I think it's an issue we need to kind of talk about. And I'll just start by reading the conversation me and my friend had, who is a male. And I think he made a lot of good points, and I would like to share that with you. And I think I said a lot of things that I think we need to discuss. I think we need to keep talking about it, keep discussing it. And I feel like when we choose to ignore things, that's when they become an even bigger problem. And so I opened Google today, and the first thing that's trending is surviving R. Kelly. I took a screenshot because my friend had mentioned it yesterday, and he was like, why does it seem like all these black men are getting down when there was like people like Weinstein and I can't remember the other person who said, who he said, so Weinstein and Spacey, who I'm not familiar with, but they seem to get away with things, whereas like stuff like Bill Cosby and R. Kelly are being taken down. And I want to say that definitely the justice system is definitely looks different by how you identify. Women tend to get linear sentences. Women tend to be get off easier. White people tend to get off easier. And the people who tend, or by research I've done, who tend to get the harshest sentences are actually Latinos, not black people, for drug charges. That was what my research said. The justice system looks different, and so I said to him, of course, it seems that black men are going down and they deserve it. They did something wrong and they shouldn't get a pass just because they're black. But I also feel like I definitely feel like white privilege is definitely a thing. And just because you have more money, you have more influence, your skin is a different color, that does not necessarily excuse you from being held accountable for your actions. So I'll just read you my conversation. And he said, yeah, it's causing a lot, for real. Like, especially for me, because I'm in a BGLO, there have been a few posts that have been made targeting fraternities as a whole. And then my organization specifically, and men, have been combating both because, somewhat paraphrasing, how are you going to use R. Kelly to talk about sexual abuse problems, especially by fraternities, instead of the broad scope of men in general? Again, when we talk about rape culture, we need to talk about toxic masculinity and men's entitlement to other people's bodies, not just women's bodies, but other men's bodies. If we talk about queer men, a lot of the perpetrators of sexual assault are men, but there are also women. Women also do this too. And I said, to be honest, I feel like fraternities foster a sexual assault culture, but I also understand that to make generalizations like that about entire organizations is not fair to the people who are decent. It's there, but mostly with white fraternities, because most of them are all just about partying and getting drunk than they are about service. But the thought consists of all white fraternities do is party and attempt to rape. Now with black fraternities, we are more known for character stereotypes, but sadly, that's why mine came under fire, and I can understand why. Let's not pretend like rape is only perpetuated by white men. That's what we're not gonna do. Violence is permeated and common in communities of color. It is normalized and minimized. Groupthink may magnify that in white fraternities, but I know for a fact its presence in black frats as well. They said, I didn't say that was only perpetuated by white men. I said that the fraternities are always stereotyped as party and sexual assault, while black frats are mostly stereotyped by the type of people that tend to join them. I never said only white men rape and black men don't, and never said it wasn't present in black fraternities. But it definitely doesn't happen that much for us to be stereotyped with it. And you don't hear of whole chapters of alphas raping girls that came to their party, or big numbers of kappas drugging girls and taking advantage. Recently, on Wake Forest campus, there was emails that got out. I can probably find copies of a frat, can't remember the frat, of talking about, I don't want to misquote it, but that it was like a giant sex party, and that they were going to take all the tri-deltas, virginities, and it was talking about like Christian and like holy stuff, and it was disgusting, and I believe the frat got suspended for it. So I'm just going to take a break to read out this email from 2018. I've also included the link to the Old Gold and Black, which is our student newspaper that published this article. So the email says, we only get so many opportunities to claim our stake in this world, and we're about to serve y'all up a fastball. Once a semester, we are graced with the privilege of holding the most absurd, lawless party of the year, tight and bright. Picture this. 1,000 virgins named Mary and a bunch of horny college dudes meeting for the first time in the Garden of Eden. Dump basement. No rules apply to this one, fellas. Imagine yourself immersed in a euphoric state of booze, lights, and Wake Forest's finest. Tridiesel has this nice circled in their calendars for months, and rightfully so. This is the only time we bless them with the opportunity to step into our holy grail. Last year, D. Simone described tight and bright as the V-card swiping buffet. Make your mark, boys. But I'll get back to that later. And then I kind of thanked him for having this conversation, and that for communicating with me, even though we might not necessarily agree on things, and that I think that I value him as a person. And so I definitely, this is where it kind of gets, I definitely agree, masses of white men take advantage of women to the point that this might be incorrect, but I believe 3 out of 9 frats on my campus have been suspended, and none of them are black. But just because it happens less in black fraternities does not mean that we shouldn't take it quite as seriously. Honestly, we as a society have only recently started talking about rape culture and consent on a mass level, and sex education system has failed us, and we have failed to teach people how to protect themselves and others. Taking AP Psych really opened my eyes to a lot of things in high school, and I think everyone should take a psych course, because things like this are discussed, and groupthink and brother mentalities influence how people act and how people treat other people, and takes the humanity away from people. It makes people more likely to be cruel, more likely to say horrible things or do horrible things, and it's horrible. And I said, I learned a lot. I learned about consent from my friends and the internet. Some people learn about sex from their friends with abusive tendencies and toxic ideals, or from porn. In porn, they see a girl say no, so they try harder. They take her clothes off anyway, and they hold her down. And in porn, she enjoys it, she giggles, she likes being used, being a slut, being someone else's property. Young boys see this and no one is talking about it to them. It's not fair to our sons to set them up for failure, but it's especially unfair to our daughters who experience trauma often due to the pure ignorance of their peers. As a sexual assault survivor, I can't watch Pornhub. It took me a while to find content that I could consume and that didn't trigger me, that didn't look like what I call low-key rape, but all rape is serious. And so he said that is true, but the thing about it is why focus on fraternities when R. Kelly, only on fraternities, when R. Kelly isn't even in a fraternity and the problem is more than just us. I said honestly though, but I think it's because when sexual assault is brought up, it can be used as a door to have a larger conversation, but we must separate the actions of one evil man from black fraternities. I'm going to make, and then I said, yeah. I said, I think we're both making a valid point, and I told him I'm gonna make this video, and he said, I think it's important to have the conversation even if the two things are unrelated. And he said, oh yeah, I'm not saying not to have the conversation, but to have it on the broad scale of all types of men, or even if you're gonna focus it on a group, then men, and specifically in the music industry, since that's where R. Kelly would fall. So I like the fact that he identifies that it's a men's issue a lot, and it's a women's issue a lot, mainly women being the survivors, targets of these kind of crimes or these kind of misconduct. But definitely members of the LGBTQ community are more likely, especially queer men, are more likely, or trans women are more likely to, versus cisgender women, are more likely to experience rape or sexual assault. And I think when we talk about societal norms, we need to talk about issues like, why isn't consent taught in school? Why do people wait till they get in college, if they go to college, to take their first consent class? Why do we tend to blame the victim instead of the rapist? Why? Why do we do that? And I like to joke, if you go on my Twitter, if you'll see a lot of posts of me talking about how men are trash, how men are this and men are that, and while that's fun to say and giggle about, of course, like I have friends like this who, I have a lot of male friends, I don't hate men, who reached out to me, had this conversation, and actually inspired me to make this video. And so I do want to say, of course, I don't actually mean that. When I say men are trash, I don't mean all men are trash. I actually mean that the systems built around gender norms tend to enable and reinforce toxic behaviors in men that is later justified, even justified by women, justified by other men, and is considered normal. Where in my culture, and I think a lot in black cultures and black communities and even brown communities, people will disown a child, disown someone they've known for their whole lives, disown a family member for being queer, for identifying as LGBTQ, but will justify sexual assault. Because I think a lot of times, because men aren't expected to be accountable for their actions, or women are expected to be, so these ideas are like, sometimes I feel like some men are actually brought to believe that women exist solely for their pleasure, for their benefit. Women are supposed to only exist for the comfort of men. And of course, this is definitely talking in a heteronormative sense, and not everyone fits in those binaries, but I definitely feel like there are power dynamics in the system. And yeah, and the thing about frat culture is that in psychology, if you do research, a lot of people are more likely to, like for example, the Holocaust. People are able to distance themselves from something if they don't see it. If they're with a group of people and they don't want to be embarrassed, they tend to be more influenced by people. Or if one person sees something wrong and then no one says anything, then they don't say anything. And it's typically after one person speaks up that other people would say something. And sometimes you wonder, why did no one say anything? For example, like with the frat emails, why did no one say, hey, maybe this isn't okay? Maybe someone did. Maybe they were too scared. Maybe I don't know. And I think that also happens with sexual assault. A lot of people ask, why did you wait so long to report? Or talk about it. And I think I never talked about it until I saw other people talk about it. And I was like, me too. That sounds a lot like my situation. Or what happened to me. I have an example. In middle school, there's this guy. He would always touch me, grab my boobs, grab my butt without my permission. And so a group of us girls, we just got together and we were just talking. And then one of us just brought it up. They were like, so-and-so touched me. And then Cynthia was like, me too. And then Claudia was like, what? Like, he did ABCD to me. And I was like, yo, like, let me tell you about this. And then there was like 8 of us who we were just talking about it, how this boy had touched all of us without our consent. And then years later, I was talking to my best friend and she told me he touched her too. And so all of us decided to go to the principal's office. I went to Carroll Middle School, the principal's office at Carroll Middle School, and report to them this guy who has been sexually, I guess molestation, I don't know the technical terms, sexually assaulting us. And so we all went there trying to explain to them, and they told us to go back to class and to come back with a hall pass. And we all went left, and that moment of bravery, again, groupthink, had disappeared. We all went to our separate classrooms, and none of us, I don't believe any of us, had the bravery to go up to the teachers and explain why. Like, when we were together in a group, that was different, but explain why we needed to go to the office and tell these adults about our peer that was touching us inappropriately. None of us had that confidence individually, but we had that power together. And I definitely feel that happens with good things and that happens with bad things. Like in frat culture and sorority culture where people are being mistreated, but it's just the norm, it's just what happens, so you don't say anything. Or people just don't care enough to say anything, and it's scary, and you don't want to be shunned, you don't want to be, even when people are sexually assaulted, a lot of times they don't report because they don't want to embarrass themselves, they don't want to embarrass, they want to protect the person who assaulted them. They just don't want the smoke. They don't want the beef, they don't want the shit that comes with that, and so they'd rather deal with their trauma and then move on with their lives. And I definitely want to talk about how we don't teach consent in school. I learned about consent from Tumblr. I remember I first learned about consent from Tumblr